It's time for the Alien Conspiracy Podcast. We are your hosts, Agent ETA,
Agent Ether,
Agent Kruger,
and Agent Anderson. Come along as we examine UFO sightings, conspiracies, and all things strange. You can follow the show on Twitter at AlienConPod. We also have an email address, alienconpod@protonmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to check out our Facebook page or group. This week's episode, The Mothman. All right. On November 12th, 1966, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, 5 men in a cemetery witnessed a terrifying humanoid creature take flight. It was seen again 3 days later. Was it a man? A beast? A spandex-clad accountant? Let's find out in this week's episode, The Mothman. Before we get started, just an update on a previous case. Jamie Spears will be stepping down as the conservator of Britney Spears' estate and her person. His lawyers wanted to be very clear that it's all a bunch of bullshit and he shouldn't have to step down, but he is anyways because of reasons. I don't know. They didn't say. They just said that he shouldn't have to. But I mean, once somebody's a vegetable, there's no coming back from that, right? So she probably still needs a caretaker. Anyways, I hate to say I told everybody so and I was right, but hey, I told everybody so and I was right. There he goes. So hopefully she'll get some personal freedom sometime soon. Probably not, but
I happen to disagree with one notion that you made, though. I become a vegetable at least once a week and recover all the time.
Well, I guess I stand corrected. Anyways, let's get to this week's topic. I believe Agent Ether is going to start us off with some history on West Virginia.
Point Pleasant specifically. It sits in Mason County, and it's named for Camp Point Pleasant, which was established in 1774 by General Andrew Lewis. It's where the Ohio and Kawawa rivers join to the south. And there's a fort located there, and their motto is the place where history and rivers meet. It's a small, tight-knit community. It's only 3 square miles large, and a third of that is actually water. The population kind of peaked in the 70s at 6,000, and it's since, for reasons unknown, gone down to about 3,000. It has an interesting history. There's said to have been a curse because in 1777, Chief Cornstalk was murdered. Cornstalk had led the Shawnee and Mingo warriors against Colonel Lewis, and it would be the future site of the town. The Battle of Pleasant is locally thought of as the first battle of the American Revolution, and in 1908, the U.S. Senate authorized the erection of a local monument to celebrate. Yeah, I know. I hear everybody snickering.
Wait, they were celebrating what now?
What? I only heard one word. Sorry.
I'm not surprised. George Washington journeyed to the Ohio River in 1770. And, there were a lot of military grants and proclamations at the time. And basically that area where George Washington went to was parceled off to different people. He got a large part of land, but Andrew Lewis did as well. And that would be where the town would eventually be founded. And of course, where our Mothman originates.
Point Pleasant.
Point Pleasant.
Hell
Sounds like a nice place.
Mothman worldwide, baby.
With a colorful American history.
You got a pleasant point right there.
All right.
Center.
Our first sighting was on November 12th when allegedly, or, not allegedly, but actually, 5 gravediggers witnessed the Mothman whilst digging a grave. The second sighting, which is the more well-known, well, actually, there's a couple of them kind of clustered around, but the more well-known sightings came a little bit later on the 15th. And one of them was in the so-called TNT area, the Old West Virginia Ordnance Works, an abandoned dynamite and ammunition factory, which was actually sort of a facility that sprawled across many acres with lots of different bunkers and facilities and things, but it was all abandoned. It was here that 2 couples driving in a black 57 Chevy Bel Air at midnight witnessed the strange creature, And just as an aside, if you've never seen a 57 Chevy Bel Air, I recommend you go ahead and do that right now. You'll thank me.
Yes.
Black or any other color, it don't really matter.
Beautiful machine.
Oh, yeah. Linda Scarberry saw two large glowing red eyes peering out of the darkness near the Old North Power Plant. She screamed at the sight of it. This alerted the others, and they saw a humanoid creature 7 feet tall with wings folded on his back. Roger Scarberry was driving the car. He slowed down upon sighting the creature, but sped up again as it unfurled its wings and launched into the air. As they sped away, the creature followed their car. They raced back to town, reaching speeds over 100 miles an hour. The creature kept pace and followed them all the way to Point Pleasant, where it finally gave up the chase and disappeared. The two couples regrouped in town, reflecting upon the experience. Thinking they had just fled from a bird, they drove back to the TNT area.
Hey, if I could add something real quick, one thing that I thought of immediately, like I didn't hear much of an explanation of the type of double date that they were going on. Like, where were they coming from? And
well, they were out in the middle of the TNT area, right?
Yeah, they're out in the middle of nowhere. Nothing out there really besides those, that rundown plant and stuff, and what exactly were they doing?
There was a wildlife preserve close to there, so maybe they were just bird watching.
At midnight?
You're right.
What kind of party is this?
At midnight and shit.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
I'm just saying is all. Just saying is all.
Maybe it was like
That's
a satanic ritual. Maybe that was a satanic ritual and they helped to summon the Mothman.
Conjured it up.
Yeah.
Oh, shiz.
Why not?
I think we're onto something right there, dude.
Yeah, I think so. I like it.
I didn't run across any theories about demons, but I am kind of digging this.
I think some people do consider it to be like demonic, although I'm not 100% sure about that.
Yeah, there seems to be different opinions. Like some people think it's a harbinger of coming disaster, and some people think it's actually they're warning everybody else about a coming disaster. Like they didn't necessarily bring it on; they're just warning about it.
Right.
But we'll get into all that stuff later, of course.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start again at the two couples regrouped in town, reflecting upon the experience. Thinking they had just fled from a bird, they drove back to the TNT area. The creature, lurking on the side of the road, was illuminated by the car's headlights. It wasn't any natural earthly creature, but something else. Once again, the creature burst into the air. Perhaps it was blinded by the lights. Perhaps it was tired of the chase. Either way, this time it disappeared into the night. They returned to Point Pleasant once again, this time reporting to the police. They told their story to Sheriff George Johnson and Deputy Miller Halstead. The police investigated the area of the sighting but found nothing. Another sighting happened on the same night. Merle Partridge was watching TV when he saw strange symbols flash across the screen. His dog began growling at something outside. He heard a strange noise and went out with a flashlight to investigate. His dog went out with him. He saw the Mothman and ran back inside to get his gun. He was too frightened to venture back outside. His poor little doggy was never seen or heard from ever again.
This is a sad story.
Man,
Let's move on to the next one.
It is a sad story.
Yeah.
Well, that is an outlier as far as the stories, because that's the only one I could find where somebody or something was harmed by the Mothman. Because the implication there is that the dog was sort of, eaten or taken away or something, right?
Yeah, it's probably a little snacky poo,
Yeah, for that big
what kind
old
of a
thing.
dog was it?
I didn't say.
I think it was a German Shepherd.
Okay.
Oh, so this ain't no snacky poo. That's
No.
Ain't no schlunt.
It's a good sized dog right there.
Ain't no buddy cryptid.
Yeah.
Man, but yeah, no. If you're gonna take somebody's dog, no, that's across
cold.
the line right there. Yeah, it's cold.
Yeah. But of all the stories, this one was the one that had the most variation in details. Like everywhere I saw it, it pretty much had something or other that was different. Even the guy's name was different depending on where the story was. And also there were some details, like for example, he was sitting there watching TV and he saw some strange symbols flash across the screen. I love it, man. It gives me chills. But on the other hand, it does sound like something out of a movie, doesn't it? Just a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that. But I don't know. It doesn't line up all that well with most of the other accounts of these experiences. Whenever somebody else sees it, that's the only time I've ever heard about like the Mothman supposedly, affecting like a TV or something. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I don't think I came across any other stories where that happened. All right. Well, the next day they held a press conference, and that would be on the 16th. Other people came forward with similar sightings. And also that day, the Point Pleasant Register ran a story titled, "Couple Sees Man-Sized Bird, ... creature, ... something." You gotta love these newspaper titles, right? I mean, I didn't make that up. I mean, that if I was making a headline title, that's probably what I would have said. And then I would have been like, it's probably a bit much. Maybe I should dial back a bit, I like it, though. It's like something out of one of those sci-fi movies.
Well, it's a local paper, too, so
yeah,
it's probably the only paper in circulation.
That's true. And probably because it's a local paper, they have a lot more leeway in what they're allowed to print, I imagine, than like a larger...
Yeah. For their 6,000 townspeople.
Yeah. They're never making their money back on that printing press. So there
I don't know why, but this poses the question also, like, if this is a bird man, like there should be some evidence left behind, and like the evidence that I thought of like pretty early on here is like poop. Hey, you ever had your car shit on by a bird?
I know, right?
I'm just wondering,
a giant bird with big red eyes.
Yeah, what about one of them motherfuckers?
Can you imagine the mess this thing would make on your hood?
Just the whole windshield, fucking destroy the car.
Yeah, windshield wipers would not be able to take care of it.
Talk about DNA evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where's that at?
Yeah, where's the smoking barrel?
Pun intended.
There were over 100 sightings during the next 13 months in Point Pleasant.
I'm sorry, I derailed the whole thing right there, but it's just like sometimes, like when these ideas pop into my dome piece, man, like I gotta say them, otherwise I'm gonna forget it. I'll never remember it.
Yeah.
I think some of us might have also been thinking it. We just didn't say it.
Yeah. Well, I apologize for derailing the conversation here.
No, I'm glad. It's an important discussion to have, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's what all the skeptics are wondering. They can't blame it on Venus in this case, so they got to say, where's the poo? Because nothing flies around without leaving some poo.
Hey,
right?
I mean, I remember reading a book like kindergarten or first grade or something. Like everybody poops. You know what I mean?
True.
That is the story.
Well, unless you're Kim Jong-un.
Oh, I guess he doesn't.
Oh,
No, he
okay.
doesn't poop.
I didn't know that.
No, he doesn't. Yeah.
Did you have it surgically removed, or how does that work?
It's magic. I don't know.
How did we get that information? Did that come from like Dennis Rodman or something, or?
I don't know. It's privy information. I can't talk about it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What if Dennis Rodman is really like a CIA operative, and he went over there
Just getting near him
to do like
Jean-Claude
CIA
Van Damme?
stuff? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
I don't know. I don't know, man.
He has the perfect cover, right? Nobody would suspect him.
That would be true.
He'd be the last person you'd suspect.
He's our last hope.
All right. Anyways, let's get back to it.
All right, Obi-Wan.
So
he did play in a movie where he was a super agent, right? Like he was supposed to be like the new.
By
James
the way,
Bond.
with Jean-Claude Van Damme, as a matter of fact.
Oh, no kidding. What movie was that?
I'm pretty sure it was an action movie, right?
Yeah, I forgot it was, but he wore like I swear the whole outfit is the same thing that Buffy, I'm sorry, not Buffy, but Kill Bill, that yellow and black striped motor. I'm not kidding. There's so many things it's so bad. It's so bad. It's good.
I love those movies.
I gotta look it up. I'll find it. Dane Cook is his wacky sidekick and his like humorous partner, and like he's so out of place. It makes no sense.
All right. Well, back to the show. There were over 100 sightings during the next 13 months in Point Pleasant. People described a brown, gray, or black winged humanoid, more like an owl than a moth. He was 7 feet tall with a 10 to 15 foot wingspan. Some witnesses said he didn't have a head, and his big, glowing eyes were in his chest. People who did see his face described it as monstrous. The mere sight of the Mothman caused witnesses to suffer extreme fear and psychological distress. Some said his eyes radiated pure evil. He shuffled when he walked, sort of like a penguin. When he flew off, he did so by going straight up at incredible speeds without flapping his wings. He was often reported chasing cars and even dive-bombing their roofs. Now, this is interesting because if you look through a lot of these sightings, which I don't want to go through each, and it'd be kind of, going over them would be a little bit much.
Yeah, there's just too many.
Yeah, but it's hard to believe that these are all just made up. But on the other hand, given the climate and the fact that it was being reported so heavily in the newspaper and whatnot, it's hard to imagine that all of these are genuine as well. So it's hard to sort of say which ones are being made up, because I guarantee some of these are just people having a gas or a laugh or whatever.
Or mass hysteria.
Yeah. Right.
Or people that want somebody who wants attention, and this is the way that they're trying to get it,
Yeah.
And, one of the things that really kind of struck me as being, non-existent, because I haven't seen, all right, so you hear these stories about, the Mothman, either scratching or hitting the top of a car with the wings or the claws or what have you. I haven't seen any photos or any evidence of actual
damage.
Damage. Exactly. Yeah. So you'd think that would be out there. You know what I mean?
But then again, this was in the 60s, so it would have had to have been taken back then. Yeah.
But I mean, if your car did get attacked by this cryptid, you know what I mean, and it did some damage to the top, wouldn't you want to document that? Wouldn't that be part of the police report, for example?
Yeah, you'd think so. I mean, people had cameras back then, so there have been more.
Were common. It wasn't a rare thing.
There have been photos more recently, actually, lots of photos online. If you look at, if you just Google Mothman pictures. Some of them look like genuine photos of something that looks really freaking creepy, but
yeah, they do. Yeah,
the software has gotten so good now that it's hard to even say if something's genuine anymore because
I've even seen some video. There's some video that if it is real, it is quite compelling. But to me, it's so grainy and it's just not clear enough.
Is it where it's like flapping around and it's super dark, like?
Yeah, I saw a couple of them. One of them was like that, and then the other one was actually like open day. Like it was just like it was the skies were blue, and like you saw this thing flapping. Like it looked kind of like it could have been like maybe like the shape of a dragon or something like that. And like that's like what the people in the video were talking about. I guess like they're kind of referencing that, but it's not clear enough to really tell what the hell it is. You know what I mean? And here's the thing also is like distance makes a difference. You know what I mean? Like if you misjudge distance between you and an object that you're observing, then how the hell are you going to be able to estimate how big that object was? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and also in a split second too, because a lot of these observations have been made in a very short period of time. It's not like a lot of these encounters were, somebody just sitting there looking at the thing. You know what I mean? So like in a split second of time, which is, in my opinion, a good percentage of these sightings, like how much can you really tell? Like I get it that like you might see something and immediately like, yeah, your natural response, whether you know what you saw or not, is going to be fear because your subconscious at least knows like, hey, fear this, get away from this because it might be dangerous, right? But I mean, in that little moment of time in which, a lot of these sightings are made, I mean, how accurate can you really be? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, some of the sightings, like the one I talked about, they drove in their car and it was following them the whole way back, but not all of them were that long. Some of them were very brief. And I think this is a case where one of the very, very few cases where some sort of mass hysteria actually makes a little bit of sense. Because given the climate, we're talking about a really small town, and we're talking about people who may have been generally freaked out by what was being reported. If it's nighttime, if you see a weird looking shadow, your imagination might go wild and you might think that you just saw something,
Well, it's like I was just showing Agent Anderson a video from India. They had stopped construction because they found these alien-like creatures up in the rafters, and they do look pretty creepy. They're these long bird-like creatures with super long, almost like limbs, and big brown eyes and very small amount of feathers. They look super creepy, but they're actually just young owls.
Yeah, they
Oh,
look
really? Okay.
They look really really weird, really weird.
Were these like mummified bodies or something like that?
No,
of
they were
these creatures,
living. They
or-
were living owls. But what you might not
okay.
realize, if you lift up the bottom of the owl where the feathers are, they have
Oh, yeah.
super long legs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can't see it. And normally you think of an owl as having stubby little legs, but it doesn't. So these younglings, which have no feathers, almost look like little humanoids. And then they have these huge black owl eyes and no feathers. So these people were totally freaked out. It was all over the media.
Yeah, those pictures are pretty crazy looking.
Yeah. That sounds like it could be a very funny situation. Everybody's all freaked out and stuff. What the holy hell is this? A demon or something like that, Or
Yeah.
But like the first person that comes on scene that has any kind of like intellect or any kind of education towards this type of thing, they understand what an owl looks like without the feathers or whatever. You're like, oh no, guys, those are owls.
Well, how does this get into the news? It's such like a little local, thing. That'd be like you were joking around with your friends at a bar or something, and the next day it's like in the news, and then it's like international. How does that happen?
Yeah. Well, to be fair though, if I saw these things in person, I would probably crap myself, like especially at night,
Yeah, it was at night.
because they have
Oh hell yeah!
their eyes are very reflective. The shape of the thing
Yeah.
does not look like a natural creature that you're used to
It's built
seeing.
like a brick shit house. It's gonna fucking take me away. I
Yeah.
don't
Well,
wanna
hey
do
man,
that.
I mean, if I'm ever going to crap myself, I prefer it to be at nighttime.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Right.
obviously, yeah.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right. Well, back to the Mothman. Okay, so the sightings culminated, and we're talking about the sightings in Point Pleasant. They culminated in the collapse of the Silver Bridge on December 15th, 1967. Would you like to tell us a little bit about this bridge, Agent
No, I
Ether?
have to flip through my notes first.
All
Let me
right.
see. Okay. So this bridge was called the Silver Bridge. It was constructed during the Roaring 20s. And we all know that was a time of like optimism. Everybody was very prosperous. Some people considered it like the best time to be in America, really.
That would be within the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah, kind of
Kind of a little late.
little later.
Yes, that's
Post-industrial revolution, I think.
And so bridges were actually being built at this time across America, and they were big events. When a bridge was finished, they had like a gala with marching bands and a mass crossing, local media. And when they opened the Silver Bridge, it was no different. It was this big affair. And this bridge crossed from the state of Ohio into West Virginia, and the main route was through Point Pleasant. It was made out of steel, but it was painted with this coating of aluminum. So that's why they called it the Silver Bridge. And I think later it was even painted a different color, but the name kind of stuck. And when it did collapse, it would take less than 1 minute to fall.
Wow.
So suspension bridges, this one in particular, has these towers, and then there's chains that are linked together like almost like bicycle chains between the towers. And nowadays they use cables in between them so that they can kind of like twist with the wind and bend. But back then they used these things called eye-bars, which were these long lengths of steel, and holes were drilled out of either side, and these pins and caps were placed where the eye-bars met. And that would be where the failure would occur. Over time, water had been pooling at the bottom of these eyes, and there was rust. And as the pins moved, it was grating and creating gaps. And it was just this teeny tiny little fracture. It was like 3 millimeters long, and the eye bar would actually break in half, taking the whole tower down with it. The bridge would start to twist. It would take the other tower down, and the whole thing would end up collapsing.
Off of such a tiny little flaw.
Yeah, it was also the material that was used. Unlike other bridges of the time, this was made of much lighter materials. It was a heat-treated steel, and it was very susceptible to brittleness at low temperatures. And the night of the collapse, the night of the accident, it was very cold out. And it was made to hold a certain amount of weight but that was in the 20s. And over time, the amount of vehicles that was crossing the bridge had increased. These vehicles had gotten a lot heavier. There were traffic lights on either side, so the lights would turn green, and all these cars would be on this old bridge at the same time. So it was a lot heavier of a load than maybe they had initially anticipated as well. So you have the fact that it's constructed differently, lighter with lighter materials. It's carrying this heavy load. And then you have these brittle cracks along these eye bars. And back then, no safety inspections were required at all. And after the collapse of the bridge, that's when I think it was President Johnson would issue some sort of decree. We don't do decrees in the U.S., but legislation would be passed such that now bridges are inspected every 2 years.
Yeah. Well, because that collapse was one of the biggest, devastating bridge collapse in American history, because there's 46 people that died?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At the time, it was the biggest one.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal, yeah. And so, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all that there would be that kind of a reaction to it. I would hope there would be, you know what I mean?
Right.
There was a sister bridge, I think it was the St. Mary, and they closed that one too because it was of similar construction. But around the rest of the country, they were built differently. They weren't built of the same materials, and they were built to carry a much heavier load, so they're still in operation today.
Wow.
Okay. Is that all you had on the bridge, Agent Ether?
I don't know. I could go on, but it's a bridge.
All right.
That's the Silver Bridge, right?
The Silver Bridge, yeah.
Yeah, the 46 people that died. He's always synonymous with some sort of catastrophe that happened. Apparently, I don't know. I'm sure you guys got to that part where there was a Russian ufologist that claimed that the Mothman sightings in Moscow foreshadowed, the Russian apartment bombings that happened, and that left like 300 plus people dead.
Well,
I'm mistaken.
Let's get to that in just a moment. I want to finish. I want to finish up with the bridge here because there's a little bit more on it. So that was the technical stuff on the bridge, but it does tie into the Mothman sightings. So on November 19th, 1967, Mary Heyer had a nightmare of people drowning in the Ohio River near Point Pleasant. She saw Christmas packages floating in the water, and she had the feeling that something bad was going to happen. She shared this dream with her close friend John Keel, who would later go on to write the Mothman prophecies, which would be turned into a major motion picture starring Richard Gere. Other people in
Gerbils.
You what?
Oh, I'm sorry. I had a Freudian slip there. I think I just said gerbils out loud without meaning to.
I think that's probably what a strange urban legend too. That's one of the more bizarre ones, I think. Which, if you're not familiar with it, then you're lucky you. Let's go ahead and leave the listeners ignorant on that one. Okay. But yeah, other people in Point Pleasant also dreamt of impending disaster. Before its collapse, the Mothman had been seen several times around the bridge, and on the day of the collapse, people saw the Mothman actually perching on top of the bridge. And after it collapsed, after the bridge collapsed, the sightings of the Mothman in Point Pleasant stopped entirely. Some interpret this as meaning that the Mothman was giving a premonition or a warning that the bridge was going to collapse, especially combined with the people having dreams about things like Christmas packages and stuff like that, because when it collapsed, it was during rush hour, and a lot of the people had just done Christmas shopping and they had Christmas presents in their car. Coincidence? Could be. I don't know. So we already said how many. So 9 people were injured in addition to the 46 that had been killed in the collapse of the bridge. There have been many sightings of the Mothman ever since, all around the world. He often shows himself just before a tragic event or disaster, and some people think he's an agent of good trying to save people from an early demise. Other people think that he causes the disaster and that he's an agent of evil and chaos. And now we have a bunch of these sightings. Why don't you tell us about the one that you were going to start on, Agent Kruger, the one in Moscow? Was it Moscow?
Yeah, nothing too like exciting there. I was just trying to like go off of what she was saying, just because of this, like, you know, it being around something before it, you know, something bad happens. But I was gonna say though, if anything, there's usually I correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't owls you know, related to some sort of foreshadowing, or like if you see an owl and you're by yourself, that's supposed to be, you know, a foreshadow for somebody in your life that's supposed to like something's supposed to happen. And if he's anything like an owl, you know what I mean? He has some features like of an owl and a bat. You know, I don't know. Like maybe they use that. I don't know.
Well, some people think it actually was an owl.
Yep, that's one of the theories, although that's one heck of an owl.
It's a
it is.
It's a mutant owl because there was toxic waste from the bunkers.
Yep, that is also one of the theories.
Like a bat owl.
Because those grounds, the TNT area, actually are, well, I don't know about still, but they were contaminated with all sorts of abandoned chemicals and whatnot. So that is one of the theories, that there was some sort of mutated creature that somehow mutated because of the chemicals and then started, you know, dive bombing cars in the area.
the main ingredient in dynamite or TNT is nitroglycerin, and through that process to make nitroglycerin, there's some nasty shit that you know, like some serious environmental damage that can happen when that stuff is released in high levels. You know,
well, but, the main ingredient in nitrogen is mutagen. I'm pretty sure. Or not. I don't know. Probably not. Okay, so there's an earlier sighting that is very similar, but it happened way before the one in Point Pleasant. In 1926, in China, actually, people saw what they described as a man-dragon hovering over the Zhangte Dam. That's Xiaon. I'm really not sure how to pronounce that, but Zhangte?
Is it with an X?
Yeah.
You said? Zhao.
Okay. Zhaote, T-E, over the Zhaote Dam. On January 19th, the dam collapsed, spilling 40 billion gallons of water into the valley, killing over 15,000 people. And the descriptions are pretty darn similar to the Mothman sightings, which is kind of interesting because this happened in 1926 and it's a completely different culture. So when you have, you know, similar sightings, it kind of makes you wonder, you know, this one probably is not some sort of copycat type deal, because it's unlikely that the people in China could have time traveled to see the reports in Point Pleasant. And it's also unlikely that the people in Point Pleasant would be reading Chinese newspapers. And anyways, that disaster in China was supposedly kind of covered up because it's not too flattering to the government who probably built this dam that ended up killing so many people.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? Who knows for sure? It could just be a coincidence, but it's very interesting.
Mothman-like creatures or depictions have been tied to all kinds of big, like, world events. Like, I mean, for example, Chernobyl. Supposedly, workers... I did that on purpose. Anyways, so workers around Chernobyl had seen a large black bird-like creature flying above the site weeks in the previous weeks leading up to that meltdown. And I find that very interesting. You know, I mean, it's not like it's not a big thing that you hear around Chernobyl, but you know, I did find that out while investigating this. You know, and it's crazy because like before I found out we were going to do this episode, I was familiar with Mothman, you know, but I had no idea that this is like it was this spread out. Like there are similar cryptids, whether they be Mothman or not. They seem to be described as almost the same thing in a lot of cases. You know, I was very surprised to find out how widespread these stories are. You know, it's pretty damn interesting. I think it's probably not a coincidence. I would say, you know, but I mean, like not just Chernobyl. I mean, shit. If you go to one of my favorite stories, actually, because it's one of the stories that supports the idea that the Mothman is actually trying to warn people, you know, about a disaster that's about to happen and trying to save people, perhaps, as opposed to being the one that causes the disaster or whatever, you know. So on September 10th, 1978, in Freiburg, Germany, there was a coal mine. And it was the beginning of a shift, and there was coal mine workers going up to the coal mine, and they got to the entrance to the coal mine. And by the way, this creature over there is called the Freiburg Shrieker, from what I understand.
Freiburg Shrieker.
But it's very similar to the description of Mothman. So check this out. They got to the towards the entrance of the mine, and they see this figure, right? I think the back of the figure was towards them at the point. At this point, in these workers are telling this thing that they see blocking the entrance of the mine, hey, get out of the way. We need to start our shift, what have you, And the thing turns around, and it is very tall, has bat-like wings and red eyes. And it's a humanoid like creature. They can tell for sure that it's not a human, but it's shaped somewhat like it. As soon as that happens, this creature gives out like a series of very loud shrieks, and they described it as something as like 50 men screaming, and also like the screech of a train's brakes like locking up. Like think about that. Like I don't know how to quite I've never heard that before, but that's a pretty compelling description of the sound that they supposedly heard.
Sounds
I did it again.
awful.
I did it again just now, didn't I? Anyways, so the workers fled out of the area, the immediate area, out of terror, obviously, because if you see something like this, you're like, holy fuck, we better get the hell out of here. I don't know what that is, So about 1 hour later, there was actually an explosion in the mine, and the mine collapsed. And it was a pretty substantial collapsing, whatever. God damn it. My brain is farting, you guys. A collapse, whatever. Anyways, it was very substantial. And if all those workers had been in the mine during this point in time, most of them would have been dead for sure. So this is one of those stories that supports the idea that the Mothman may be actually trying to save people and warn people of a coming, destruction of something, or a bad event,
Yeah, that's probably one of the more famous stories because of what I like about it is that there's a definite cause and effect there. It's not like the bridge collapse where you could say, well, maybe he was warning them, maybe he wasn't. This one, he was like physically blocking them and screaming at them in his language. He was probably saying, hey, fuck off, this thing's going to collapse. That's, in Mothmanese.
You guys want to die? You don't want to fucking die, right? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. That's one of the more, I don't know, it's a really interesting story, I think. It's one of the better ones.
What if it's a tortured soul that's just trying to warn it? Oh, sorry.
I have a story where they also describe the screaming kind of sound. It's around the Chicago area in 2017 during a solar eclipse. And there was this family, and they heard this sound, and they said it was kind of like the squeaking of truck brakes, but much louder. And then they heard it again for 3 seconds. And then they saw this large object flying over the docks. And of course, it had the humanoid features and the limbs and the bat-like wings.
Yeah. I just imagine that sound. I hate screeching truck brakes. That's one of the things I really don't like. You're sitting there enjoying your day, maybe having lunch at a nice restaurant, and then a truck comes by, like, it's
like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah. Oh, I hate it.
Yeah. Oh,
Chicago is a very interesting place when it comes to the Mothman, because recently, not so recently, but from what I understand, in like 2017, 2018, there was actually quite a surge of Mothman experiences for people. What people were reporting a Mothman like creature that they were observing. And from what I understand, a lot of these people claimed to have seen it around the Sears Tower, or what is it? It's not called the Sears Tower anymore. What is it called?
No idea.
I don't live in Chicago.
In Chicago?
Chicago. Yeah, Chicago.
Sure it's the tall building? It would be the
Is
Series.
that? Yeah, I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
At any rate, freaking, I find it interesting that Chicago, out of all places, would have, a rash of sightings, for the Mothman. It's
Right.
I don't know, it's not your typical type of place that you would think that this would happen, because most of the places that you see people claiming to have seen the Mothman and what have you are more forested. Like it's not a city. It's not the concrete jungle.
No,
you know what I mean?
just to confirm everything, he's not. We've ruled out extraterrestrial, right? That he's not from a different planet.
Actually,
it could always be extraterrestrial, man.
We'll get to that actually.
That sounds like a theory.
Well, there is actually, yeah. Agent Ether might have some notes on that. I definitely have some notes on that, but we'll maybe do that in a little bit. But let's see here. We talked about Chernobyl, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we touched on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was seen flying around Chernobyl by workers and residents, and he was spotted just before the meltdown and was seen flying through the smoke and ashes after the event. So I guess he's immune to radiation. Well, good for him.
But it would make sense because he was created by this toxic radiation. So maybe Chernobyl, there's a link there.
Yeah.
Chernobyl also had a lot of...
Just like the Toxic Avenger.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and the fact that he's seen over so many decades kind of suggests that if it's one creature, then it's more of a supernatural kind of a creature rather than something that's, sort of just like a regular creature that just so happens to be flying around the areas,
Well, some people think it's immortal. There's just one.
Yeah.
It's immortal.
Well, of course, Mothman's immortal. Come on.
There was also a sighting around the Twin Towers around 9/11, and some people said that on the day of the attack, they saw him flying a parallel course with the second plane that hit the towers. And this one I'm less inclined to believe because we have a lot of camera footage of that second plane, at least enough to see that there's no Mothman flying next to it, But who knows? Maybe he was on the other side of the plane and you couldn't see him, or maybe he was, some sort of wavelength. You can't really catch him on film or something. I don't know.
Maybe he was trying to stop it, but failed.
Yeah, maybe. But that's another one of the more prominent ones. Well, and that one kind of goes against it too, because even though those planes probably weren't flying at their maximum speed, none of the other reports that I'm aware of say that the Mothman was flying hundreds of miles an hour, like as fast as a jet. I mean, that's pretty fast, but yeah, who knows, Who knows about this stuff? I mean, if he's a supernatural creature, then I guess anything's possible. But yeah,
I just found it funny or not funny. It sucks that people suffered from it, but it seems like anyone who would lay their eyes on it during Chernobyl that would suffer from intense nightmares and receive threatening phone calls, like as if Mothman's like in the phone booth, like calling him up, like, "Hey, fucker, I saw you looking at me." Like,
well, all right, so the Mothman is from Virginia, what have you, and then the Appalachia area, or what have you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he would, if the Mothman was real and could speak English or any language, he'd have a Southern draw. I mean, he'd have an accent, right? So, I mean, what do you think he'd sound like?
Everybody.
Was that Mr. Towel?
I find that drawl offensive.
Well, I'm just saying. I wonder. I just wonder if he'd have an accent or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I suppose everybody has an accent.
Yeah, you're right.
We have American accents.
We do, I suppose. So some of the more prominent excitings. What am I saying? Some of the more prominent sightings were, though I don't really want to go over every single because they're all very similar. But some that we haven't talked about, if you want to look up more of them, are the I-35 bridge collapse in 2007.
Oh, yeah.
The swine flu outbreak in La Junta, Mexico in 2009, Cornwall, England in 1976, and the Fukushima nuclear power plant in 2011. And there's a lot more. Those are just some of the more prominent ones. And I have
Are we just waiting for Corona when he's spotted before coronavirus was?
I know, right? So I have a story from the internet, which is a lesser known story, but it's a personal anecdote. And sometimes I find these to be very, very interesting because they're not well published. And if somebody's typing this up on some forums, I got this one from the Above Top Secret forums. Yeah, sure, they could be doing it for the entertainment value of other people. But on the other hand, they're not trying to get it published and they're not trying to profit off of it. So it's kind of interesting from that perspective. So this is what they had to say. These are the events as they happened on Friday, September 30th, 2011, in the area around Miller Park in the University Park neighborhood in Chicago, Illinois, approximately 1 block from the main campus of the University of Illinois at Chicago. Things began like any normal Friday night. I and a couple of friends were going to go out to have a few drinks at a local bar. As I got to my apartment, I jumped into the shower to start getting ready while my roommate went to her room to get ready. I finished and walked out of the bathroom to my room and started to get ready to head out for the night. As I started to get dressed, I heard my roommate scream loudly. I dropped what I was doing and I ran to her room to see if she was all right. I walked in to see her cowering in the corner of her room, white as a ghost and shaking. She was babbling hysterically, saying that something was looking in at her from the window. I looked toward the window and didn't see anything but the light coming from other apartment across the courtyard. I asked what she had seen and tried to tell her that she might have been mistaken. We live on the 3rd floor of a 5-story apartment building, and there's nothing outside the window but a 30-foot drop straight down to the courtyard below. And that's sort of, maybe it's Mothman, maybe it's not, but basically the witnesses thought it was Mothman. Maybe it was some creep on really tall stilts. I mean, who knows?
Or like John Belushi on a ladder, looking through the window, Animal House.
Yeah, but to me, it sort of seemed, whatever that was, it might have been an owl hovering outside of the window, I don't know, but it seemed like a genuinely, it seemed like
terrifying experience.
Yeah, it seemed like a genuine story.
A sandhill crane.
Yeah, really.
Have we talked about the sandhill crane yet?
No, we have not. That's the next thing I have in my notes. I was just going to get to that.
Well, shit, best time as any, the sandhill crane, as far as size goes, is the best natural explanation, that I could think of, because it is a very large bird, and it does have red, not on its eyes, but around its eyes on the top, right?
Yeah, it does.
And it has a very large wingspan. So like if you want to feed into the notion that you could have a mutated bird around that TNT factory, that rundown factory, then that would be more likely than an owl, I would think, because of just sheer size.
Yeah. Well, yeah, actually, I think the sandhill crane is a much better explanation than some sort of owl. And it wouldn't even necessarily have to be mutated. Like, what if you got the Shaquille O'Neal of, sandhill cranes, like one that was unusually large for the species?
An alpha crane.
Yeah, exactly. And so from what I understand, the sandhill crane is not super common in the Point Pleasant area, but at the same time, it wouldn't be out of the question for one to show up there either. So
it has been there. It's been documented as being right in that immediate area before.
Right. So of all the possible explanations, if you want to go for something that's just, a reasonable explanation or something terrestrial, I guess, I think that's probably the best explanation.
Yeah. And it would make a lot of sense too, that like if that area didn't see those type of birds very often at all, then those residents might have seen that bird and like, what the holy hell? Like especially if it was a brief encounter, where they didn't have that good of eyes on the target, I guess you could say, whatever,
Yeah.
Then they could have mistook it for something very different than what it really was.
I feel like that might have explained maybe the mass sightings.
Right.
People seeing something out of like the corner of their eye, but it doesn't explain the primary sightings and the ones that lasted any length of time.
Right.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And with these sightings, have they circled back and doubled back on them and like come back and okay.
There's been some sightings where the people have gone back to the area, the location of the sighting the next day, and actually found like what they describe as like a pile of ash or something weird. Like I remember this one of the interviews I saw. It was a video that I saw while researching this, and I forget the guy's name. It just didn't seem that important to me to like write down the notes. You know what I mean? But it was just something I was watching in the lead up to this. But the guy had described finding like what he described as like a filleted carcass of a deer on the side of the road, right where he had seen this Mothman creature. I see
First
driving
a
by
German shepherd, then a deer. What's the world coming to?
Right?
Well, and some versions of the story with the two couples says that they, on the way out or on the way in, or one way they saw like a dead dog on the side of the road, and on the way back it was gone. And some people say that maybe that was the guy who was watching TV, maybe that was his dog, but I don't know if that was. I'd have to go to their original statement to see if they really said that, because it seems like something that was sort of embellished on there to me.
Maybe it's from the movie.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anybody seen the movie?
Yeah, I saw it when I was younger. I remember that. I didn't watch it on the lead up to this just because, like, why? You know, like, but like, I do remember watching it. I mean, it's an all right movie, especially when you consider the quality of movies nowadays. But you know, yeah, it was all right. You know,
This made me want to watch the movie. I'm like, what is this movie about? Because there were a mass amount of reportings. Like, people came out of the woodworks to report Mothman sightings, like in the decade following the release of this movie.
Yeah, I wonder, maybe that had something to do with it.
Well,
You
a
never
lot
know.
of them said, oh, this reminded me of something that actually happened in my childhood.
I mean, there could be, you know, sometimes like people need other people, like, to know that there's other like victims out there for them to come forward, kind of thing, where it's like, oh, I'm not alone, so I'll do it. I don't know, maybe.
Oh, for sure.
so that guy John Keel that wrote the book, The Mothman Prophecies. I mean, he definitely took some liberties when, you know, embellishing the story, I guess you could say, you know?
Yeah, but I also
But,
read
like,
that he did actually interview people who had
Yes.
reported sightings as well.
Yes, that's I was about to touch on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did his due diligence when it came to the his research, you know?
Yeah, and anybody writing a creative story, they're gonna have to take some liberties to make it a readable story and not like
Of course.
some dry newspaper article. You can't do a whole novel on something like that, you know?
Yeah.
You want
yeah.
people to actually buy the book,
Yeah,
not be self-published.
Yeah.
yeah. So one of the other explanations that people think might be, well, not really an explanation, but people think there might be some relation. Have you guys heard of the Grinning Man?
I have heard of that particular tale before.
Is it
but-
like a boogeyman?
Huh.
Not well. In this case, no.
It's-
There's different types of grinning men, I think, but
Yeah.
Even
this-
the name sounds creepy.
It's almost
Yeah.
like a Slender Man almost too. It's like it's like this big, tall, lanky figure that like creeps in the shadows in the dark, and all you see is just his grin and his eyes. And then when you get near it, it's like this big, obscure, like creature that just it's massive.
I don't
but
like
it looks
this
tiny.
story.
Yeah, it's creepy.
So there was a story in near Point Pleasant, I think about a week before the Mothman was sighted, and there was a UFO sighting, and somebody saw a creature get out of the UFO, and the alien, I guess, for lack of a better word, introduced himself as Indrid Cold, and this is the Grinning Man. There might be some people think there might be some kind of connection, but what that connection isn't exactly clear. Maybe the Mothman is some kind of extraterrestrial, or the witnesses, you know, saw Indrid Cold, or I don't know what the connection is. But some of the Mothman witnesses were questioned by men in black types who spoke in robotic tones, and they supposedly had pale, translucent skin and told people to keep quiet about their sightings. Do not report your sighting, which
Please sit on my face. Wait, what?
Oh, that's the wrong command.
Which
Sorry.
I don't know why you would send out such bizarre looking men in black to quiet people, because those people in and of themselves sound like a cryptid sighting. If you wanted people to keep quiet about something, you wouldn't send another cryptid to tell them to not talk about the first cryptid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just
It's like,
compounding your
I
problem.
stabbed myself. Give me the other knife. I'll stick the other knife to get the other knife out.
Oh, it is but a mere flesh wound.
Yeah. So I think Agent Ether already mentioned Chief Cornstalk a little bit, right?
Chief Cornstalk.
That he was murdered and his
By an angry mob.
well, I have a
my
different
God.
version of this story actually. That he went to negotiate with the people at Point Pleasant because they were sort of button heads a little bit, and he was detained. And then his son came 2 days later, and his son was also detained. And a couple days after that, 2 deer hunters were ambushed and killed by Native Americans. Enraged soldiers actually murdered the chief and his son as revenge. And his dying words, because, I guess this version is based on an opera. So as he's dying, the chief said, I was the borderman's friend. Many times I have saved him and his people from harm. I never warred with you, but only to protect our wigwams and lands. I refused to join your pale-face enemies with the red coats. I came to the fort as your friend, and you murdered me. You have murdered, by my side, my young son. For this, may the curse of the Great Spirit rest upon the land.
Those are some long, dying words.
I know. Wait, it's not all.
There's more.
I have to scroll down. May it be blighted by nature. May it even be blighted in its hopes. May the strength of its people be paralyzed by the stain of our blood. And not just the Mothman, but there's a lot of strange events in the areas that are sort of interpreted as being related to this curse. But then again, who knows? It's sort of, at this point, like a local mythology that, I mean, did this guy even say these words? Was this even a real chief? I'm not even sure, you know? Maybe? I don't know.
I think he was definitely a historical figure. I don't know about the opera.
Yeah, the dying words.
Well,
you know?
No, he definitely, there's a picture of him. I saw a picture of him.
Oh, okay.
He definitely existed, for sure.
All right. That's about all the notes I had for this episode, or that's all I had for the Mothman sightings, except usually the third week of every September, there's a Mothman festival in Point Pleasant, which, man, I would love to go to that.
That's one of the ones that, like, I would love to check off the list. You know what I mean? Because why not,
cool.
Dude?
Yeah.
And by the way, have you ever seen the statue that they erected in their?
That's an awesome statue,
badass.
Dude. Oh, the abs, bro.
Yeah.
Hey, you seen that ass, bro? Dude, hey, look at that statue has an ass on it. Like, I've never seen.
Stop performing fellatio on our statue. They're just killed.
I'm just saying, whoever made that statue, like, there's a couple like key points where they definitely focused a lot of attention.
Yeah.
That statue do have cake though.
Well, not only can you see pictures, they actually have a live webcam where you can go. It's like the Mothman cam that's maintained by the museum, and you can go and watch a live video feed of the statue any time of day or night, which I found to be completely bizarre, because why would you need a live feed of the statue? Like, you sit there.
No. Have you ever seen this statue?
I have, yeah.
Why not? Why wouldn't I want a live feed of this motherfucker?
Well, I watched the statue. I watched the live feed for a few minutes, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And sure enough, every few minutes a car drives by, and that was it. It was pretty late when I was watching it, like maybe around midnight or something. I was hoping something creepy would happen, but nothing
But then
did.
the statue, though, is still there. You know, I'm like we're talking about. Have you ever seen the ass on that motherfucker? Dude?
Oh yeah, I have indeed.
Do got cake.
I'm just saying this all.
We're gonna see Agent ETA dressed up like a Mothman doing things to that statue. If you go to that live webcam,
I don't want to know what Agent ETA is doing while he's watching the live webcam.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm not gonna lie. After I looked at the abs and the ass on that statue, I may have cleared my browser cache a little bit. You know, just a little bit.
Yeah.
That museum gets good marks from the people who visit it. I went to TripAdvisor and everyone was like, "Oh,
really?
This is such a cool place to visit, and it's well maintained, and I bought all this merch, and check out what I bought."
They got pictures of the inside of it you can check out online. It does look like a pretty damn cool place. Like, it's not that big. It's just a little museum, but it looks pretty cool.
They said there's a lot of historical stuff there, like a little miniature bridge, and they talk about like the history of the bridge and how it collapsed, and there's like a little memorial to it, and about the history of the area and that sort of thing.
Definitely be an awesome place to visit.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Does anybody else have anything else on the Mothman?
Well,
nothing too crazy.
What about the fact that he could be an extraterrestrial?
Oh yeah, I talked about that a little bit. That was tied into the grinning man. That's what I had on that. Did you have anything on that, Agent Ether?
What about the poop though? The lack thereof. You know?
Yeah, poop.
Aliens don't poop.
Well, if I ever go to Point Pleasant, I'm going to scour the lands for big, giant owl turds.
No, I just wanted to mention that West Virginia has more documented UFO activity than any other place in America. And that in part is because a lot of accounts are abound in reports like in Project Blue Book. Mm-hmm. But also it's home to one of the first UFO sightings reported in the U.S. It was over the New River Gorge, now a national park. The mayor, one Garnett, said that he actually saw a UFO over the Skyline. There's some sort of object over Mount Hope. This was in January of 1950. There's very little information that's left. He at one point erected a small monument, I guess, and buried a time capsule, but they've both gone missing.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can look at the Blue Book files, they're online. And I think on a website called Fold 3, which I believe is actually put up by like a Mormon organization of all things, unless I'm mistaken. But it's really cool just to look through a lot of these old cases. Many of them are anonymous, some of them are not, and some of them are very short. But if you look through like a particular year and filter by a particular region, you can start to see some patterns where multiple witnesses are seeing very similar things over, even on, sometimes the same day or maybe over a few weeks or something. I kind of want to go through, maybe do an episode where we just go through some random Blue Book files, because there's a ton of them, and they are very, very interesting.
Oh yeah.
Some of them are really long. Like the one I did my first episode on, there's a Blue Book file, the Michigan swamp gas, and that one is like a couple hundred pages, I believe. So that one is really long, but most of them are just these short little reports, just a couple pages. Yeah, well,
I'm down to do that.
Yeah, that'd be a fun topic.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, all right. I guess that about wraps it up for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, you could really help us out by sharing us on social media or recommending us to your friends.
Keep it strange.